When the rain don't fall, that's when you know you're gonna go dry. When the rain don't fall, that's when you know you're gonna go dry. And it won't do no good to be crying out loud, babe, or cursing the sky.
Welcome to Thinking Green. I'm Rana, and today we're doing something a little different from the usual. We have two guests from two different entities, I don't know, in New London that are making waves in their own way. And this happened because all three of us were sitting around a table, the same table, with a lot of other people, and it turned out that there were events coming up this weekend in both these groups, and we wanted to let people know about everything. So hopefully it won't be too much of an overload, but I want to thank Brad Sheridan for coming on. He has been on before, I think, representing Fiddleheads Food Co-op, and Regina Mosley, who's the organizer for the Southeast Connecticut Community Land Trust. And although those sound a lot different, there is really quite a bit of overlap in mission and in how we interact with the community. So welcome, Brad and Regina. I guess you can start either one of you, but I'm interested in hearing how each of you became involved in what you're involved in.
Well, thank you, Rana. I had a feeling you were going to make me go first. So I'm Regina, as you said. For me, being born and raised in New London, I've always been a part of the community, and so like the community is ingrained in me, wanting to do what's best and make sure that what is best for all of us as a whole is happening. I started with the Southeastern Connecticut Community Land Trust a year ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, and just seeing the conditions in which affordable housing is not necessarily easily available in New London has been a driving force for me. So the mission of the Land Trust is to hold land in trust for the development and production of affordable housing, green spaces, food production, and also buildings for community organizations to, do work in. So for me, that's really important so that we can bring the community back together in a way that it used to be when I was growing up.
And good luck to you.
Thank you.
Brad.
I started working at Fiddleheads about 6 years ago. I think that's right around the time the first and only other time I was on this program too was.
I think you were brand new.
Probably for the birthday party. It was like maybe, yeah, or maybe they had just finished the birthday party and I was on for whatever the next thing was, the annual meeting I believe it was. But I just kind of fell into Fiddleheads. I wasn't a member at Fiddleheads. I kind of had been living, I had just bought a house in New London, but I lived in the area my whole life essentially. And the community's always been important to me. Like I used to, even living with like 4 other guys in New London in an apartment, we would do a dinner with all of our friends like every Tuesday night, and we'd all get together and have dinner together, like actually cook a meal, like and have like that aspect of community. And like for me, that's as an artist, like community doesn't have to mean like just New London. It can mean like the whole area. And like as an artist, I think on the last show someone was, I think Ali was talking about how like community is like all across the world. Really, we are all connected, but like locally, things matter a lot. And Fiddleheads, I think, really embodies that as well. And I think that there is actually pretty strong ties between the Land Trust and Fiddleheads. Like our Fiddleheads mission, like without the Land Trust, like the Land Trust basically is like a way in which Fiddleheads can help accomplish our goals too, is by being able to lean on other people in the community doing this work. And we kind of work together, like that's the thing, we all work together. And that's what I love about my job specifically. Like I go to work and like this is what I do at the co-op is I'm figuring out how to involve the community and the owners of the co-op and try and respect like all of our wishes to meet those ends.
And I have to tell you, as an old person here, I have a history at the beginning of both of Fiddleheads and the Land Trust. Like 15, 16, 17 years ago, someone who's still at Fiddleheads asked me if they could hold a meeting at my house. And silly Bob and me, we said, sure, use our living room. And it turned out that we got really deeply embedded in the early years of Fiddleheads, where there was a lot of discussion and some conflict about what directions Fiddleheads would go. And then I backed up. We're members and we shop there, but we don't really get involved in anything day to day. And with the Land Trust, you know, I was one of the incorporators. And then once the 501c3, you know, went away, I can just be there, you know, sort of help every so often. But for me, it's really great to see like younger people just taking these things over. So, you know, if you think about succession planning, and some of these organizations do a better job of it than our government is.
Yeah, I love being referred to as younger people.
It's nice.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Well, you two are both, I think, closer to my kids' age than to my age. And, but yeah, you probably are looking at younger people in their, you know, 20s, early 30s, and seeing real leadership potential in them too, because I never cease to be amazed and impressed by some of the young people in this community.
Yeah.
We have several of them at Fiddleheads that are, you know, Danny Cruz is a great example of someone right out of high school going on the Board of Education. You know,
Yeah.
he's really full throttle, man. He's really involved.
Yeah, and he's really big in community too.
Yeah.
And on community. And also the young people I hear in Youth Voices. Like I do a lot of work with them with the Land Trust and outside of the Land Trust just in my personal life. And there are some amazing leaders coming out of there. Also with Fresh, like we have a partnership with Fresh because the Land Trust holds the deed to the land on Ledger Street where they have a community garden. So we're able to foster those relationships through food production and the great work that they do. Also a very talented group of young people coming out of there. And they're willing to get their hands dirty with political work and with volunteering and showing up to do different things in the community. So it's great.
And when you're talking about food and housing, what we're seeing in this era in the U.S. and maybe a lot of the world is that everything is a commodity. You know, food's been commodified, housing is commodified, and I think in past generations maybe those things were commodities a little bit, but they were seen as basic human needs that everyone had a right to. And that's changed, and it isn't assumed that everyone has a right to food and, you know, shelter. And so it seems like both Fiddleheads and the Land Trust are kind of responses to what's happening in the world in terms of access to things that should be human needs.
Right. And they still are basic human needs, right?
Yeah, we haven't changed.
We won't say down with capitalism. Oops, I just said that. But like really that's the thing that's driving a wedge between so many things, right? But the basic human need is food. It is clothing, it is shelter, right?
Yeah.
Those are things that every person needs and every person deserves. And I feel like with the land trust model, we're trying to take some of that capitalism away in a way that brings back land stewardship and affordable home ownership through stewarding of the land and letting individuals purchase the home while the land trust still holds the deed to the land so that that home is permanently affordable. So that if someone wants to move out of that home, they can then turn around and sell it back with a ground lease model to someone else who's income qualified so that the home stays affordable in perpetuity forever, right? That's just one way that we are trying to bring back the stewardship of the land.
Now, the CLT has gotten some new properties over the last year or so, and you mentioned at the start land in trust for housing, for food production, for open space, for nonprofit community use.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about some of these new properties? And I think we do have some photos. I don't think I kept in the photo of the Ledyard Street one just because
Yeah.
I had a lot of pictures, but do you want to talk about some of the fairly recent acquisitions and how they fit into the whole mission?
Sure. So the newer properties are 46 Gorton Street, which is a single-family house in New London. It's 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. We're in the process of remodeling that, which will hopefully be done by the end of the year. Given how hard it is to get materials and things like that. We're hoping that that'll be done by the end of the year, early next year, and will be available to an income qualified homeowner. There are steps that each person would have to go through in order to qualify. We also purchased a farm in Salem, and that included a farmhouse and a barn.
Yeah. Okay, and this is a Gorton cleanup. We'll talk more.
That's a ledger cleanup.
Oh, ledger.
That's
oh,
a ledger cleanup from
okay.
last year. That's okay. There's the farmhouse. Again, we purchased a 15-acre farm in Salem. So the Southeastern Connecticut Community Land Trust is regional. So we do all of Southeastern Connecticut. And we're in the process of working with Chloe Nunez, who is a gardener with Fresh, and her conglomerate of folks to purchase the farm so that they can bring those indigenous practices back to the town of Salem with the farm. And we just closed on 74 Garfield Avenue, and we're working in partnership with Ledge Light Health District and Fresh, the Health Improvement Collaborative, to utilize that space, which will be known as the place, or a wellness hub, so that way they can, continue to work out of there using that space for food for the people, which feeds a lot of people in New London through a food pantry process. I actually volunteered there last Wednesday, and there were over 700 families that came to get food. And so there's definitely a need for food in New London.
Wow. So it sounds as though with all those recent acquisitions, you have a little piece of each part of the mission.
Absolutely, yes.
Food production and open space and community space and residential space.
Yes. Yes, and that's what our logo is. I don't know if you can see it on my shirt, but there's a house for housing, a building for community organization, some trees and green space here, and then food production in the garden. So we're meeting our goals as far as mission is concerned, and we want to do more. Like there's multiple ways that we can expand and do better for the community.
Now, Brad, Fiddleheads has had a busy year as well.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look exactly the same as the CLT's busy year, but do you want to talk about some of the things that are new in and recent
There's
developments?
a lot. The Land Trust is certainly involved in, or we're definitely working together in new ways. We've got a new general manager, Stanley Bellamy, and he has been getting out in the community. He met with Regina, he met with Hearing Youth Voices. We have a stronger partnership with many other organizations as well, we've really amped up our efforts to really be more involved in the community. I am very recently, if not officially, close to officially being on the advisory board for Cooperate Connecticut. I was just in a meeting on Saturday. Thank you. And we were talking about different ways of mutual aid and cooperatives, and it was like a Co-op 101 sort of session that we spent all day talking about it. And the land trust came up in that conversation more than once. Obviously, I talked endlessly about Fiddleheads, which is going to be 16 years old this month, and Fresh is 20 years old. They just had on Saturday, they had a big celebration as well, Soups and Stories. Yeah, I had to go to this other event for Cooperate Connecticut, because there are a lot of groups popping up to match needs. I mean, between COVID and the perils of capitalism, like people are having to come together all over to meet all sorts of different needs. There are cooperatives forming for childcare services, housing cooperatives, the mutual aid groups. I think people know more about mutual aid in the last 5 years than I think anyone ever knew previously. They've been popping up everywhere you turn. There's one in Hartford and New Haven, and there is one in New London. I don't know how active they are right now, but during COVID they were pretty active. The Buy Nothing groups also I consider part of that mutual aid of trading resources back and forth. I feel like that helps on so many levels. Like you're reusing rather than throwing stuff away. You're saving yourself some money, which we all need to save as much money as we can these days. Well, I think probably always, really, but.
Yeah, and keeping things out of the landfill.
Well, and I think that's a real aspect to it. Like we have these recycling programs, and the more you really learn about them, you learn that the recycling programs are not super helpful. Not that we shouldn't be recycling, because it is helpful to recycle some levels, but reusing is absolutely more important than recycling, and not buying plastic in the first place is also incredibly helpful. And don't get me wrong, I buy my fair share of, I have 2 small kids, we buy our fair share of plastic disposable things just by the necessity of our lives. But I feel pretty good when I do remember to avoid some of those. I don't buy soda anymore in a plastic bottle. It's just something, it's usually available in glass or aluminum, so I've made the decision to not buy out of a plastic container for that one thing.
Well, there is only so much that we can do as individuals, even though we try. But one thing that struck me when both of you were talking was the idea of, the big, nonprofits, and this came up in last week's show too, that sometimes the nonprofit organization becomes its own industry of a sort, and becomes more a gatekeeper than a real free conduit.
Yeah.
So I think partly these mutual aid and cooperative endeavors might be a response to that. And I'm speaking as someone who worked always in my work life. I did early childhood education, and I always worked for nonprofits, small ones, big ones, and they weren't always the best employers, I have to tell you. Mm-hmm. There were definitely stresses there, and the people who were on the top, the chief executives, were very far removed from the rubber meets the road people.
Oh yeah. That conversation has come up almost every day in my life in the past, at least the past week or two. I've had a conversation with somebody just this morning I was talking with someone about, and last night actually, about how nonprofits they're not the golden solution to all of our problems, and pretty far from it. Perhaps they are necessary because of a lack of a real opportunity otherwise, but they're not a solution we should be beholden to. Like, we should be looking for other solutions, and I think that is what's happening in all of these community organizations that are popping up. especially in the organizations that I've had the pleasure of working with, there's an awareness that like there are flaws to even the programs we're using ourselves. Like we're very aware of our own flaws and the flaws of others, and it's not meant to be mean-spirited. It's not as if I despise everyone else who's at a nonprofit or even these large brands that like they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Like I don't love it, but like I don't despise the people. I despise the result of these. I don't know how to say it, but yeah, the destruction that's coming from it. And like it's not any person's fault, but I think collectively we have to realign our values.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, it's like when you hear like people say the system is broken, right? Not really understanding that the system is working exactly the way the system was designed to work. And like if there were well-structured programs, there might not be the need for so many nonprofits to feel like they have to carry the weight. But again, it's like who's holding the power? Who's carrying the purse, right, so to speak. And I think, like, it's time for that to shift, honestly, like, without getting too political, right? It's just the matter of we have all of these nonprofits that are doing great work, and there are certain systems in place that are bucking against the things we're trying to change or the things we're trying to improve, when ultimately, if there was a greater level of support from city government or, you know, the people who are in power or who are perceived to have the power, that maybe some of these programs or nonprofits wouldn't have to exist because the budget would be set up in such a way that those needs would be met, right?
Yeah, and I think I think that we don't tend to be very creative, or government or the more standard nonprofits don't tend to be very creative in how they're organized. And there are a lot of different ways for people to organize to get things done. You know, my own history, you know, I was a kibbutz member back in the early 1970s. And decades later, when I was a home visitor in a very hierarchical organization that's a nonprofit, and I thought, boy, in this particular job, the kibbutz, you know, horizontal organization would have made so much more sense than having supervisors and, you know, different levels. It just actually wasn't the most efficient way to do it, but it's the American way and it's the corporate way. And I came out of the kibbutz experience not defining myself as a socialist, but there were some things in that experience that would be lessons for ways that we could organize things better here. Now, I do have a couple pictures. I can't imagine that anyone who's watching this show has never been inside Fiddleheads, but I did put in a couple of pictures of the inside of Fiddleheads just so people get an idea, if you're walking the doors, what it's going to look like. There's a produce section and a whole lot of bulk stuff. And if you bring your own jars or reuse your bags, you're not adding to the plastic load of the earth.
Yeah.
And I think that must be the wellness part.
Correct.
So, and there's a lot more, but just to give an idea, it's really a pretty full service grocery store.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess in some ways it is smaller than like another grocery chain. Like we're not a huge store, but it is a full service grocery store. We have you know, everything you would expect to find in another grocery. We have a kitchen in the back that makes like items for like grab and go purposes, salads, wraps, that sort of thing, and they're expanding. They basically opened within a year or two of me getting there, and they've just grown every year. They're growing more and more. COVID threw a huge wrench into a lot of our plans. You know, surprise, surprise. I think everyone was forced to change quite a bit. So I won't say it's a setback. We actually like we were very busy during that time. You know, being one of the few places that was open for the whole time, and we
And you
grew
had
a lot.
pretty robust online
yeah.
ordering during that time as
Yeah,
well.
we were very lucky in that sense that we were able to, like, we never had to close our doors. Like, there were other co-ops I know in other parts of the country that did have to close entirely for at least short periods of times while they had to kind of catch up, like whether that was implementing online ordering systems and whatnot. But we were very fortunate that we did very well through COVID. But there was, every day was a new problem. You can't find this, you can't find that. It was not fun for anybody. And I mean, we had many staff people who, you know, there was a lot of mental health issues going on during that time too, for, again, totally valid reasons. But we had a lot of people who were very stressed out. The masks issues, just the stress of having to worrying every day. We're working directly with people, and you know, often coming, no one knew what the rules were, or especially in the beginning, there was a lot of confusion. In hindsight, you can laugh a little bit about it, but it was very scary at the time, and the political climate, of course, was some ways was the scariest part of it. But we came out of it changed, and I hope to say for the better. I mean, I feel like we are much more aware of the community and willing to try new things now. Which I'll just leap into. We're looking into getting WIC products into the store, which does mean conventional items. I believe that the deadline is like at the January of every year. Like, you can't start the WIC program outside of that 1 month. So there's a deadline for that. So over the course of this year, you might see us carrying more conventional items, which I will admit, like, obviously is going to ruffle some feathers at the co-op, and but the fact of the matter is we have a whole community to serve, and this is something that we care deeply about, and we're hoping people will be understanding. You don't have to buy the conventional products. They won't be replacing any product that any of the organic products, but like, especially for WIC, like, you have to carry X amount of milk, and it has this one kind of milk, and it's this one kind of, you have to carry this kind of cereal. Like, that's the only cereal that you can get, and it's you can't even get a knockoff brand of it. It's got to be this brand, and there's reasons for it. I'm sure it has to do with lobbying and things that we don't love. But if that means that a family's it's gonna help a family in New London, then that's what we're gonna do. And we're going to continue to think about how we can serve the people in New London and Greater New London. I mean, there are plenty of people who come from all over. And that can look like carrying more local brands. We love carrying local brands. And obviously, the organics are in a funny place. There's so much to talk about. I could do a whole show just on all the changes that are happening with organic.
You're invited to come back like next month or whatever to talk about.
There's a lot to talk. There's a lot going on, and I understand how anybody could be concerned about the food. Like, like what we're eating is very important to us, and ideally we'll be able to serve more of the community, and the education that is a core part of our beliefs. It's one of the cooperative principles is education. With any hope, we'll be able to create a New London where we can all afford to eat the best food for us, and what's healthy to us, because healthy means something different to everybody too. So some people will swear by organic, but there are people who can't eat fresh vegetables and fruit. There are certain diseases that grow on fresh food that will devastate some people. And is it cystic fibrosis or something? There is a disease that, like, you can't have fresh vegetables. So, like, you think healthy means fresh vegetables, but that's not what it means to everybody. And, like, it's important to remember that, like, healthy is really just what keeps us alive. And yes, we all have like some things that we think apply to everybody, but we're all different.
Well, I think humans did evolve in a lot of different spots in the earth, and I
Yeah.
have friends who, for whom plant-based has saved their life, and I have friends that keto has saved their lives.
Yeah.
And it's, there isn't that much intersection there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's really not so simple as some of us would like it to be.
Yeah.
I think just to piggyback off of what you said and to thank you on behalf of the community. I don't even know if I have that power, but the fact that Fiddleheads is pursuing WIC and carrying WIC items opens up a whole nother avenue of a population and community that doesn't necessarily go to Fiddleheads or think that they can go to Fiddleheads, right? There's this narrative that some people don't understand how the co-op thing works. They feel like I have to be a member there in order to be able to shop there, which isn't the case, right? You don't
That's
have
right.
to be a member. I shop there. Kudos to the kitchen. They do an amazing job. I'm thanking everybody now. The kitchen does an amazing job. They have an amazing grab and go section, right, where you can get your food and heat it up in the microwave that's there, take it with you, or sit in the cafe and eat it.
Yeah.
And if I'm overstepping, just say
No,
shut
go.
up. Fiddleheads takes EBT. I don't know if a lot of people know they take EBT. So that's also another avenue where folks who wouldn't necessarily go to Fiddleheads can go and get things. They're open till 9 o'clock now. I'm the official Fiddleheads commercial. So you can go there. You can go
Yes.
there even in the evening, if you forgot to get something and you don't want to drive all the way across town, right? But I think definitely the WIC component
Yeah.
will be huge because, there's a whole population that lives right around the corner that it'll be within walking distance for them.
Yeah.
Especially at that, the extended hour, which
And
I
that's-
feel like is phenomenal.
It's so important to us that because Fiddleheads was formed by a group of people who, it wouldn't have formed without those people, and they weren't necessarily. There were people in New London who formed it, but there was a lot of people from all around who formed it, and they were looking for natural organic foods. So without them, there's no Fiddleheads, period. So we're in no way interested in leaving behind that idea. But as Fiddleheads is the only grocery store downtown, there's an obligation that we should be meeting the needs of the people in New London, and not excluding anyone else. But it's hard to. You'll never please everyone. That's just a universal
This is a
truth.
really old discussion in Fiddleheads,
Sure
too,
is.
that people who live across the street from Fiddleheads have not necessarily felt like it was a store that was made for them.
Right. And I've always personally been focused on trying to make sure that people can feel like it's for them, because it's sort of like the identity of the co-op is anyone can own it. You can own a part of a grocery store, and yes, you do have to have that to legally own it. You have to have that $175.
Right.
Which can be split up. That's neither here nor there. I mean, $175 is $175. That's out of reach for some people.
Right.
For a frivolous thing of being able to brag about owning it, right? But you can really own a part of that community, be a part of. We need more places, whether more co-ops in just period in New London and in Connecticut, and that's why I'm hopeful that. Cooperate Connecticut, there's this organization who's looking to create more. I'm going to say co-ops, but they're including mutual aid, they're including land trusts, they're including anyone who's a part of the solidarity economy movement, and really anyone who's open to just more communal action. And that's really what we need, is more people to get involved. And getting involved doesn't have to mean every month you go to a meeting, and it doesn't mean that you have to contribute a lot of money, or even a lot of you think of it as volunteering as this huge burden. You can be involved in a very small way, where maybe you're only volunteering once or twice a year, maybe you're showing up to 1 or 2 meetings a year. I think the Community Land Trust, the rule is what, 1 meeting a year?
1 meeting a year. Yep, $25 annual membership.
Right.
And 1 meeting a year. If you want to come to more meetings a year, you can. That's great. If you want to do more, that's fantastic. But really there's an annual meeting once a year. We, get together, go over everything we've done, things we're gonna do. We're just in community with each other, usually at Bates Woods, taking advantage of the
Right.
free park and, mixing, mingling, communing, eating, and having a good time.
Now, I've been seeing activity next door to Fiddleheads at the old Camp Dog location.
Yeah.
What's happening there?
Well, a couple times we had Regina from the Community Land Trust came and helped me clean up the place a little bit. Fiddleheads is renting the space. We don't exactly know what we're doing with it yet. I plan on having a survey that will be asking a couple questions for basically, as the birthday's coming up this Saturday, I'm asking myself a lot of questions. And one of those questions is, what would we do with more space? And I'm interested in what the community thinks we should do with that space. I think, I was talking to someone last night who was like, it's a shame there isn't a cheap hot dog place. And I mean, I wish Fiddleheads could open a cheap hot dog place there, but I find that to be
The same
fairly
here as
unlike-
WIC, that might be too much a stretch.
that might be a stretch to have friolators going and have those delicious greasy breakfasts. That might be a stretch for Fiddleheads. It's kind of not our lane, and we should kind of recognize what our lane is. And maybe it could be a cafe where we would serve some foods. Like we already have the kitchen, so maybe we just kind of expand into there. I think ideally, if money wasn't an issue, you'd just knock a wall down and say, hey, Fiddleheads is just bigger, and we just offer more of the same things that we're offering. Short term, I don't know that we have the resources to do that right now. So, but the idea of using that space for community events is something that personally means a lot to me. So we could put art shows up on the walls in there, have meetings in there. We could do any sort of like pop-up things in there. If meetings come to mind, but classes or events in there, that seems like an easy reach to me, that we could use that space for the community, and maybe even like turn it into a cafe is not unrealistic. Also, I believe someone put the idea in my head of like, you could even sublease the space. I believe we're allowed to do that. I'm not positive, but you could, if someone had an idea for a business, it's not out of the realm of possibility that it could be used for a different business. Really, so one of the things I want to know from people, what do you think it should be, right? And like, I also want to know, I'm very curious, because we've been advertising a little bit. I'm curious where people heard about Fiddleheads for the first time. Like, I know a lot of people have heard word of mouth is like the biggest thing, because we don't do a ton of advertising. And word of mouth is great. It's the best kind of advertising. But I really, as we've done a little bit of advertising, I really want to hear that it's working, that people are hearing the ads and that they're coming to the co-op. And I want to hear some new people coming in. I know there's new people coming in. We have something like 3,000 active members who shop in the co-op. It works out to be, I think it's just under 60% of our business is owners. So that's still 40% of people are people who aren't owners, and we do have a lot of new people coming into the co-op all the time. And I'm curious where those people are coming from and how they heard about it.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I don't know. Well, so the inspiration for having this show to start with is that there's a lot coming up this week that gives people an opportunity to somehow participate or be supportive. And I'm kind of going to go through the list in like chronological order, sort of, starting this Friday. There's a benefit for the Community Land Trust. Do you want to talk about it?
Sure. It's Friday Night Folk. It's this Friday. The doors open at 7 p.m. Their tickets are $20. It's going to be held at All Souls, which is on 19 J Street in New London. It's John Prine is one of the musicians that they're going to do tribute to.
I think Nancy Griffith is the other one, and both of
Nancy
them
Griffith,
have passed away within the last couple of years.
And so coming out in support, all the proceeds will go to the Southeastern Connecticut Community Land Trust. If you cannot be there in person, visit their website. It's FridayNightFolk.org. There'll be information on how you can watch it from the comfort of your own home, and there'll also be a way for you to donate there as well.
Okay, so that's one good thing. Okay, so the next day, this is a big weekend. 16th birthday sale. So
The 16th birthday sale on February 17th. It will really, the main event will basically be from 10 to 7. There will be a variety of vendors, local vendors, 860 Kombucha. I think we'll have 92.9 will be doing a live broadcast, meeting the board and our new general manager, Stanley Bellamy. What else is happening? There's a store-wide sale that'll be all day long. There'll be free samples to give out, and then we'll have some sort of. I think we're doing a carrot cake muffin that will be given out around lunchtime, I believe. That will be pretty limited. You'll have to be there, pretty much right when those come out.
Okay.
I think.
yeah, so don't come late. You'll miss the cake.
Yeah, the carrot cake muffins. Yeah, those will probably go pretty fast.
Okay, and something else that's going on, I don't know when the elections are, but there has been a call for candidates. Do you want to talk about
So
the
we're
board?
always, it's always nice to get more people involved in the board. I'm not on the board for Fiddleheads, but I will say that Fiddleheads has a very robust board. Like, I've seen lots of boards for other organizations, and Fiddleheads they meet regularly. They have a diverse range of interests, and like when we talk about diversity, it's not just like how many black and brown people are on the board. You're talking about a rich diversity, like for anything, not even for Fiddleheads. When we're talking about diversity, we're talking about a wealth of different backgrounds and knowledge. And yes, it's important to have representation based on like having different people from all kinds of different backgrounds, including black and brown people. But like, it's not only, right? You want diversity in like job titles. You want diversity in like sexual orientation, like how many women are on the board. Like, these things are important. They're not important as like a check mark on a box, but they bring valuable insight into, like, they can answer questions. I cannot answer questions on so many things, but if you have people who don't look exactly like me, suddenly you have a new perspective on so many different things. So it's very important that people understand that, like, if you're saying to yourself, it's not for me, it is for you. Not that you have to do it, but you don't let yourself think you can't do it. You can choose not to do it, but there's no reason you can't be on a board. And you will learn a lot from being on a board too. And I will say specifically for Fiddleheads board, it's just a wealth of knowledge learning from the other board members, and you go to there's all sorts of training involved in it, and like they go to retreats and whatnot and learning opportunities. I mean, it's fantastic. I really do recommend, like, if you're able to devote, it is a time requirement. Well, I won't pretend it's not, but if you're able to spend the time on it, I mean, like, it's such a service to the community and bringing those different views in. And this is what's really important about, like, don't think that you can't do it, because like we need new ideas, like, just period, everywhere. We need those people with fresh takes on things and different lived experiences. It's vitally important that more people realize they can be involved.
Now that you've made your case, if someone is watching this and wants to be on the board, or at least learn more about what it would take to be on the board, how can they contact you?
So there is an email specifically for joining the board. You do have to be an owner to run for the board at Fiddleheads. And if you are already an owner, you should have gotten an email that has, I forget, it's like nominations committee at fiddleheadsfood.coop. I believe that's but you should have gotten an email if you're eligible to run for the board. If you become a member, you can immediately run for the board. So it's not like it's too late already.
No 90-day waiting period.
There's no waiting
anything
period.
like that.
When you become an owner at Fiddleheads, like if you pay your first $25, you immediately have the same voting rights as someone who was a founding member. everyone, like a principle of cooperatives is one person, one vote, just straight across the board. So there's that. But that is one thing. You do have to be an owner to be on the board. It seems pretty clear why, but
Sure. Yeah, it's another secondary level of buy-in, more of a
right.
level of buy-in than just being an owner, but it's a piece of it. Okay, now, so there are community land trust things going on beyond, okay, there's a chapter meeting. We have a flyer up there.
Oh, thank you. So we hold the Southeastern Connecticut Community Land Trust, like I said, is regional. But the New London chapter is the most active chapter at the moment. We hold chapter meetings every fourth Wednesday of the month. So this month it will be on February 28th. It's from 5:45 until about 7:30. We say 5:45 arrival because there is dinner included, so folks can get their food and we can start on time. There's also childcare. And yeah, so we delegate tasks. We provide some volunteer opportunities for folks. And we try to recruit more members.
And I'll say the childcare, they have a good time. Those kids, it's a good group of kids. They have a really good time. They didn't want to leave.
That's good.
At the last one.
I'm going to do that, yeah. Well, okay, there are work days too for people who want to participate in a way that's not sitting around a table.
Absolutely. And just to mention what Brad said about the childcare, that's one way to start building community early, right? Besides seeing your friends at school and being in community with them at school, seeing them at different events and activities is also a way for young people to start building community and being comfortable around other people, which is really important. So we have working days coming up in March at our Gorton Street property. March 2nd, we will be doing sort of landscaping. If there's not 10 feet of snow, given the forecast for tomorrow, we'll be doing some.
I think we're getting rain on the coast.
Some landscaping work at that property on March 2nd, front and backyard. And then on March 9th, we have coordinated neighborhood cleanup. So that will be where all the neighbors on Gorton Street can come out, clean up their property, clean up their neighborhood. We facilitated with the city to get their tool truck to come out so folks can use,
That's been a really great
lawnmowers
public
and-
works resource.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. So that's on March 9th. And then April 13th, we're having another working day with volunteers from the Coast Guard Academy. And that'll be probably around the garage and, scraping and painting. So those hours are from 10 to 3:30. You can email me if you're interested in volunteering to Regina, REGINA, like Mary, at SECTCLT.org. And you don't have to stay the whole time. You can come for a half hour, you can come for all day, whatever works with your schedule. We would love to have you.
Now, this is a little out of order, but you were talking about the child care. So I think maybe it's a good time for you to make a Girl Scout cookie pitch.
Oh.
Because at the last meeting of the people around the table, I think there were like 4 or 5 Girl Scout families there.
Yeah, they're all in, my wife runs the troop, so there will be Girl Scout cookies on St. Patrick's Day at Fiddleheads, actually, after the parade. And then if you know any of those Girl Scouts, you might see a poster or whatnot floating around on one of the social media sites for one of the troops. Like the Girl Scouts is a really good organization.
So is either the Land Trust or Fiddleheads, or the Girl Scouts for that matter, marching in the parade?
Fiddleheads is.
I don't know if we are.
Yeah.
I don't know yet.
I believe the Girl Scouts are also marching, and then they're going to Fiddleheads to sell those cookies.
That makes sense.
I think they're, yeah.
We march with the Riverside Park Conservancy, but we haven't gotten confirmation yet that the truck and trailer we use is available that day yet. So I'm not sure. I guess I wanted to ask, like, what other ways can people get involved other than showing up at these events that are coming up soon? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so like I said, our chapter meetings are every fourth Wednesday. Anyone everyone's welcome. You can come to one or many. Our annual meeting is to be determined, but it's usually at the end of May or June. And you can email me to get on our newsletter mailing list. I'll add you, and you'll get all of the information as far as what we're doing and what else we have coming up.
Well, we have a little bit of time to actually talk about some like bigger issues, and you had mentioned, affordability of housing, and I think when I read about housing affordability in the newspaper, it seems like the assumption made is, oh, you must be talking about subsidized apartments. And I think I own a house in New London that I bought almost 30 years ago when prices were very low, and it's more affordable than like where most people live in New London. The mortgage got paid off, and even with property taxes perhaps going up, it's still like I'm paying so much less than people who are just renting or people who are trying to purchase right now. So I don't know, maybe you can talk a little bit about the affordability aspect of the land trust and how it's different from how many people perceive affordable housing.
Sure. So the definition of affordable housing is that you do not pay more than 30% of your income in housing. And I think when most people think of affordable, they do think of subsidized, or they think, of government housing or Section 8 housing. And I think that's a myth that I'm working hard to dispel, because we all should be afforded affordable housing, right? Like, no one should have to pay more than 30% of their income on rent, right? Because then we're making the tough decision on what else do we spend our money on, or what else is left for us to spend our money on. Like, is it food? Is it toiletries? Is it our medication, right? So I think more education is where I come in as far as letting people know, like, you don't have to spend more than 30% of your income on housing, and you could potentially buy a house with the land trust for your tax return, right? Some people get upwards of $3,000 to $5,000. If their income qualified per HUD of the area median income, they could use that money as a down payment on a home. Or they could use that money as a little nest egg to start saving so that they could buy a home. So we have lots of programs and ways to help folks purchase their first home, as well as STAT grants that New London has set up for people who want to buy a home in New London.
So we have like 3 minutes left, and there's one more event going on this weekend that I wanted to mention, even though it has nothing to do with either Fiddleheads or the Land Trust. There's going to be an event at Red Square. Some people know it's a 116 Federal Street, a big cubicle building. And Mike Alowitz, quite a few years ago, went to Palestine and worked with both Israeli and Palestinian artists and artisans to paint a mural a little bit outside of East Jerusalem. And a documentary was made about it, and that documentary will be shown 6 p.m. on Friday night. It doesn't really conflict with Friday Night Folk, which I was very happy to hear. But I thought that would be an interesting thing for people to know about. And I will be political for 1 minute and let people know that I am carrying around a petition to get a Green Party presidential candidate on the ballot. It might be Jill Stein, it might be someone else, we don't know. But for people who want to see someone on the ballot who believes in universal health care, who believes in social justice, who wants to reduce the military-industrial impact on our economy and the world, sign, let me know, so you can sign, get other people to sign. We need 7,500 signatures to get names on the ballot, just to have people, new people, more people as part of the conversation. So with that said, thank you, Brad. Thank you, Regina. You're both invited to come back in the future and talk for a full hour about your organizations, because I think we could fill that.
Yeah.
But I'm glad we managed to do this today as well. So thanks for coming on. And for all the rest of you, we'll see you next week.